Let's be honest, when you're buying tech, like, do you really want to go talk to a salesperson a bunch of times? Not me. I don't want to talk to an SDR. Like, put me with someone like on the solutions team that can relate to me as a marketer.
The level of accountability is insane because you understand that what you sell, you will be responsible for. And I think that mentality and that shift changes the perspective. And so
if your brand, gets found for cheating or lying or not telling the full truth, good luck recovering.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Hillens.
Let's see what's trending. Welcome back to another episode of GTM News Desk. We have an exciting one for you today. You are going to love everything that we unpack with our special guest in the third segment. But to get things started, I am joined by Mark. And if you don't know me, I am Nick. And we're going to dive into the first key headline today. And it's all about Google won't add fact checks despite the new EU law that's out there. And it's interesting because it's like, hey, Google's saying they're not going to add this to YouTube videos. They're not going to add it to their search engine. Now, what does that mean as far as the creators, as far as people that put stuff out there on a regular basis? Should you trust all of this from a fact-checking perspective, and especially as someone that's, dabbling more and more in YouTube? I think it's important to figure out, like, hey, is this something that is going to be worthwhile from a trust standpoint, or is this going to change? Because, based on the article, it's looking like, Meta is still playing into it. They're coming up with a new program, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how Google plays out, because it's just, they're saying that it's not appropriate or effective for their services.
Well, yeah, it gets into the question of, by the way, very casual intro there, Nick.
That's
very casual. It gets into the idea of AI, and so much now, including video, can be produced by AI. And if it's produced by AI, is what the AI is saying or writing real? Is it factual? There's been a huge uproar of this since basically 2016. It's, of course, started before then, but that cycle on the election side brought a lot of this to the forefront. And the idea of fake news now being top of mind with a lot of people. Yes, Facebook has recently said they're getting rid of human fact checkers. They're going to take the X route. I think a lot of this is money related, which is the case for most things. Political, which is the case for most things. I think the EU stuff is always a little bit overreaching. Some of it in this article makes good points around how would they do that? And Google says, how would we do that? How could we fact check everything? But from a brand standpoint, if you bring this down to what does this mean for B2B go-to-market? You need to make sure that you're producing the highest quality, the most factually relevant, interesting stuff that you can, because those are going to be the winners. If your brand, gets found for cheating or lying or not telling the full truth, good luck recovering, and good luck. So I think the stakes are at all-time high for how you think about fact-checking. It is not just fact-checking from what the brand says, but it's more, Nick, what we always say, it's not so much the message coming from the brand, it's the messenger. So the people who are sharing the message on behalf of the brand. So when you partner with other people, when you do webinars, right? When you do all these things, and this has come to light in the last 10 years thanks to the DEI movement, which is unfortunately becoming less now important and cut down, which is just complete shit. But the point is, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility for your customers, your employees, your shareholders, just human-to-human responsibility to, be as honest as you can. And if you're going to use AI, just make sure that if you're using AI for content creation, it's not telling an untruth. And maybe you're not even purposely trying to lie, but you could become part of a sticky situation if you don't do your due diligence.
well said.
So yeah, I think that's a really interesting headline story to start with. Segment 2, before we get into the conversation with James from TestBox, which is going to be a great one, Nick, is a story from the Martech Review, I believe. And this is a couple months old, so it's not breaking by any means. I think the date's November 12th. The story is about the key shifts redefining go-to-market strategy. And there's a couple things I pulled out of this for us to listen to and learn from. One is, and I strongly feel this is true, market and customer research and causal analytics are going to be like the most important thing, which gets into the whole point we always make, which is around storytelling, relationships, and partnerships. Getting to know the market, your customers, and the emotive side of that, and the things that are causing them to react or feel something, which is a big part of B2C, Nick, is such an important thing that most B2B companies don't invest enough in, or some maybe not even at all. And they build these like surface level personas, and it's just garbage. And what's even more astounding from this kind of research they did is they found that 50% of B2B leaders interviewed had no serious business strategy document. Over half the companies don't have a business strategy document. Even our small, tiny 2-person business has a kind of strategy document next. So like, I don't know. This is a really good one to double click into. It's in the show notes, the link. Some of it is like, duh, obvious. But some of it is like, man, like, let's make sure we have some of these things buttoned up, and let's get a more crisp focus on the customer.
I agree. And I don't know. It's so weird that so many of them don't have that. Like, if you had to give, an example, like, how could someone get started, like, documenting these things? Like, what would you say? Because I think that's possibly where people struggle. There's just not as many examples or ways that they can think about it. I mean, there should be, but maybe they just don't have the time or commitment to it. But like, is there anything like you could say, like, one or two things they could get started to start documenting something like this, so they're not in that 57%?
Like documenting the business strategy?
Yeah, like what's like a key takeaway?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to figure out is like who are you trying to acquire as customers, and what are their problems and pains? Jesus, like to me, it's like so obvious. It's obvious because we've been doing it for a long time. But people listening, like, if you don't have that well defined, and if your whole company doesn't really know that, and you're not training every new employee that you bring into your company about that, and you're not enabling them about how to support, service, build, market to those people, I mean, yeah, you're going to have massive inefficiency. You might not even win. You might, and if you're not always validating that, given how fast the market changes, how fast consumers change these days, how fast business is changing because of the AI revolution that is now squarely upon us, hold on tight, I guess.
Well, buckle up. We're getting ready to head to segment 3. We've got James from TestBox. This guy is brilliant. Let me just tell you that. You're not going to want to miss the regular episode. You're not going to want to miss the exclusive episode, and we will see you there. All right, you have made it to the third segment of the show. We are so excited to be joined by James. I'm not going to steal his intro. James, thank you so much for joining us. Tell everyone about yourself.
Mark, Nick, thanks for having me. My name is James Kaikis. I'm the Chief Revenue and Experience Officer at TestBox. TestBox plays in the demo automation space, which you may have heard of, but we have a very different approach. We're a synthetic AI company. So we help companies be able to show the full product suite, full platform, and live product, usually through demos or proof of concepts. But before I got to TestBox, I was actually a solutions engineering leader at a couple small startups like Showpad, Revinate, and then I worked at Salesforce, and I was leading a commercial manufacturing team before I started my own company called Pre-Sales Collective. Some people have heard of Pre-Sales Collective. I was the first and only global community for pre-sales professionals, and I really went from like leaning on my solutions engineering background to being a full-on entrepreneur. So we built that business, sold that business, but really grew it to a 35,000 member global community. So I got a lot of experience working with people all over the globe. And when I left, I decided, hey, I want to go back to tech. And what better place to go back to tech than the demo automation category, where I was partners with most of these companies and watched a lot of the companies be born in this space. So that led me to where I'm at today. I've been at TestBox for over a year now. And super thankful to be able to talk about our story, my story, and talk about the shift that I'm seeing in go-to-market right now.
Love that. It's interesting because I was like, I feel like I knew you a little bit. And like Showpad, so years ago, I used to work for a company and we were members of Sales Assembly. And I used to always go to Chicago and I would hang out at the Showpad office. And I ended up knowing this guy, Chris, there really, really well.
Everyone knows Chris. Chris is great. So a fun fact is actually, I lived in San Francisco when Showpad was in San Francisco. And when they moved to U.S. headquarters to Chicago, I temporarily moved here nearly 7 years ago. And, Chicago's been a great city. It's been a great thing for me, but the Showpad office is just fantastic. A lot of really talented folks there. And it was great to see, Showpad's investment. They bought LearnCore and then invested in that local Chicago office to really build the scene here in Chicago.
Love that. Absolutely. So let's dive into it. The first question is all around the new go-to-market playbook. Everything that Mark and I talk about is really around people first. And I think what you talk about and everything that you believe in is very similar. So when you think about why is the shift from the old playbook necessary around the whole solutions team, solution selling, things like that, how do you feel it impacts modern organizations?
Yeah. I like to put this in a bucket of what I call convergence of trends, right? And I could probably talk for 30 minutes on this concept of just convergence of trends. But, you had growth at all cost. You had ZERP era companies. You have mix of buyer expectations changing. You have access to information, and then you have AI all happening at one time. And so all these things are happening now. And you have companies that have traditionally run a certain playbook, right? This outbound playbook, outbounds, and looked at it as a math equation and somewhat of a math and science equation. But when you think about what has shifted, there's now so many companies that got crazy valuations and don't have a lot of revenue to stand for it, right? And you have maybe really big point solutions that don't have a path to IPO or $100 million optionality or even profitability, right? So like that is kind of changing the way they need to think about their business. But then you have larger, enterprises and bigger companies that realize, hey, there's tech consolidation happening. And so I need to have this platform play that happens as well. And so you've got like the big incumbents versus the small upstarts all trying to figure things out. While you got this AI wave that's just coming in right now and shifting focus. Like, let's be honest, we now see tech companies that go from 0 to $8 to $10 million in revenue in 12 months. Like we really rarely saw that previously. So there's all these things happening, and then you mix in the buyer behaviors. It just, what previous people did and ran doesn't always work. And I think I've seen in my own experience, you had amazing people that worked at Salesforce or Oracle or IBM, ServiceNow, these great companies with hypergrowth. And they pick up the playbook and they go to a smaller company and they insert the playbook. And that just doesn't work anymore, right? And then, it just doesn't work. And I've been in companies where people have tried to make it work. And so I think what's happening now is, I've talked about this for about a year now, the rise of the generalist, right? You have a new wave of consumer expectations. No longer do you click a button, talk to sales, and you have to do 4 disco calls before you see the product. There's all these trends that are happening. And so companies, to survive and grow in this type of market, have to take a different approach to buying and selling. And I think that is, the general thesis of these convergence of trends, is that what worked previously is not going to work. And we're kind of rebuilding this new way of going to market. Now we have things like LinkedIn now and TikTok and all these other social media platforms where you can start sharing best practices. That didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. And now it does exist. And so I think we'd like to talk about TestBox is everything is on an Olympic level margin, right? The difference between winning and losing is so microscopic at this point. It could be people, it could be, product, it could be the customer experience. And so that's why there's so much more pressure on everything today. So again, I could dig into that, but like that's the general thesis of why there's a new playbook being written.
Nick and I talk a lot about the shift from search to social, and you just hit on that a little bit, right? Like that's one of the things that is just changing, and it really has changed. So let's dig into this a bit more, because I'm a huge believer in every company can become a strategic partner for its customers.
100%.
A lot of companies are just tools.
Yeah.
Some might be good vendors. Some might be partners.
Yep.
Very few are strategic partners. And I can't wait for you to unpack like how to become a strategic partner over this episode, because I think your whole idea of like solution-based selling, and you were that solution engineer, and like you're selling a true solution to a problem and not a technology or not a tool, is so important today. So I guess just like I'm gonna let you run with that. I'm not going to ask you a question, James. Where would you go with that?
Yeah. So I love that you brought this up because this is my entire thesis at TestBox, right? We need to be more than just a product. And if you are just a product, you could be delivering immense value and you're still at churn risk, right? You are at risk of not being a must-have within your organization. And so we look at this as a true partnership. When you're buying TestBox and going through a TestBox evaluation, we are alongside you, trying to teach you and help you, coach you on how to buy software within your organization, right? How do we go and build consensus with the sales team? How do we go and get, customer success involved? How do we go and build a business case to the CFO and the CRO? And that is just the start. And I think this is like the one thing I didn't mention on the last question, that's the general thesis. In software, we have forgotten who matters, and it's the customer. We've been so focused on revenue at all costs, get that deal signed and moved on. But that's what has to shift. And so even for us at TestBox, Mark, to this question, is I've got a solutions background. I literally co-founded the Pre-Sales Collective and talked to some of the best solutions organizations in the world. And so even for TestBox, we think about one, our technology as providing value to our customers. Two, we run change management and organizational change alongside them to make sure our technology is adopted and helps them in this new way of selling. And then three, from a partnership perspective, like I literally am meeting with some of the solutions leaders and solutions leadership on how we build headcount justifications, how we look at ratio planning, how we think about, performance metrics. And then additionally, we are even helping some of our customers out with their troubled customers, right? Where we saw that there's churn risk or people that we have partnership. And I think that is what the difference is like people don't just look at software companies as like this tool anymore, right? They look at the people, as you all mentioned, right? They look at what value are they delivering on just a technology level? Are they good people? Are they helping me do my job? And I think that is the new wave of software and the expectations of buyers. Now, where this starts to get really interesting is like, as it scales, can you hold that true? Because most folks would probably argue like, as you scale, it's really hard to do that. One, from a training perspective, like, can you train talent internally to be able to take the time and the energy? And two, like, do you just have the general resources to be able to do that? And so we're trying to really build a business with intent. I applaud Go-to-Market Fund has highlighted us for really focusing on the long game, right? Every customer we sign, we're focused on a long-term plan, an expansion plan, multi-year plan, and that shows the partnership. Like, we're in this, right? We're in this together. And because I oversee the entire go-to-market, I am responsible, and my team is responsible for making sure that you're implemented and you're finding value and success of the product. I can't just sign you on the dotted line and say, see you later. My team and my org is responsible for your ongoing success. And I think that is the difference. And one maybe hot take on this is like, people don't want that level of accountability and responsibility, right? It's hard. I'm not going to lie. This is a hard job. And my head's on the platter if things go wrong. But I want that level of accountability and responsibility because I want to build a business with customer intent in mind.
Yep. No, I love it. And the most important thing I think you called out that we should unpack now, but also in the exclusive content, because that's where the good stuff really is change management. You're buying something to create change and to get to an outcome and result. So how you help your customers navigate the change that's required, both from a knowledge and education acquisition perspective, implementation, but then ongoing building the right habits, building the right rituals, right? And understanding what's happening is paramount. And that's why so many software companies, from my belief, has such bad churn, because they don't focus on the change management. They focus on selling the features and the tools, but not the change management.
See you later, right? Not my problem, someone else's problem. And that's, again, the problem too, is like misaligned incentives, misaligned goals. People have their own objectives and things that they care about. And that's like what's missing at the end of the day, right? Like the CEO shouldn't be the only person that cares about, revenue in, NPS or whatever CSAT score you use and, NRR. Like everyone has to care about it.
Yeah, 100%. When I'm thinking about this next question, and I've actually worked for companies where we've had a solutions team and it's worked out incredibly well. One was in the hyperconvergence IT space years ago that got acquired by HP. And one was more recent where what I've seen from a few companies, especially in like the MarTech space, is they're building solutions teams and they're ex-marketers that are becoming these solutions people where they're delivering a ton of value. So sometimes, let's be honest, when you're buying tech, like, do you really want to go talk to a salesperson a bunch of times? Not me. I don't want to talk to an SDR. Like, put me with someone like on the solutions team that can relate to me as a marketer and can help me get from point A to point B to point, X, whatever it is. And the question that I'm thinking about is, when you think about how does a solutions team contribute to building trust and engagement with buyers, like, what does that look like to you? Because I don't think it's often talked about enough.
Yeah. Wonderful question, wonderful perspective. Actually, a fun fact about Showpad is that I would like to try to hire non-traditional backgrounds and people from a marketing background to come into the solutions team so they could be experts. Just a quick aside is that's how I got my tech careers. I used to work in operations in athletic and hospitality. I went to a hospitality technology company, and I was the only person in the business that worked in a hotel and could talk to hoteliers. And that's how I built my credibility, because I could speak the common language. And my general thesis is that the solutions team should be the voice of the customer, right? At the end of the day, they're the ones to say, hey, this is a good fit. This is not a good fit. This is how we're going to deliver value. And when you think about the incentives, if you've got your sales team on the wrong incentives of just closing revenue and not worrying about the ongoing success, that creates, what people say sometimes is commission breath, or, just trying to force a square in a round hole, right? And when you have a solutions team who's customer oriented, customer obsessed, and they are compensated and their goals aligned to the ongoing success, they can speak to the truth of the overall customer. What's best for the customer right now? How do we deliver them value? And when they answer a question, you know that they're typically answering with your best interests in mind. And I think this is just my general thought process about the solutions profession generally. And this is a little bit of a hot take, because I spent most of my career saying solutions engineers should stop on the signature and we should have the professional services team and CS team taking it. But I've realized you build all that trust. You build all that credibility. You spend time away from your family. You're going out to customer on-sites and events, that all of a sudden a contract is signed and you just disappear. Like that just doesn't make sense. And the solutions professional, when you're aligned to that customer outcome and you're responsible for their deployment and their ongoing success, it changes the entire mindset and it changes the entire accountability. At TestBox, our AEs are full life cycle. Our solutions architects own the accounts in perpetuity. I do not have a CS team, and I do not have handoff. And people have,
amen.
Thanks, Mark. And people have been like, James, I don't believe in it. But the level of accountability is insane, because you understand that what you sell, you will be responsible for. And I think that mentality and that shift changes the perspective. And so to your point too, like when you have people that come from industry, or if I hire customers, they understand the value, and that brings down the barrier, right? Because you're trying to build trust and build rapport so that when your customer hears what you have to say, they want to listen to you, right? And when you come from industry or domain expertise, you literally get instant credibility. Just one quick example on that. When I worked at Salesforce, I worked in manufacturing. Salesforce was building manufacturing cloud. And let's just be super transparent. Manufacturing is a bunch of older white men. And one of my best solutions engineers was a woman in her 20s. And do you know why? Because she worked in manufacturing for 10 years before she came into Salesforce. And she would walk in that room and said, I was in your shoes. I was in your shoes for 10 years. And literally, would explain her journey. And she had instant credibility, even though she looked nothing like anybody else in the room. And that goes to show for something.
The storytelling and experience is so important. You kind of just answered the next question, but I want to dive deeper into how, which is how do you actually bring the sales and the CS team, customer success team, together with the solutions team? I think the way that you design your organization is going to be a direct reflection of the customer experience. And
great.
Right what the customer gets, right? Some famous business person said that. I forget who, but you nailed it. Something that we'll get to the exclusive content that I want to talk to you about is the idea of a customer value framework, aka maturity model, and how you create a united story from the moment someone learns about your brand to the moment that they're becoming a huge customer champion of yours and are just, re-signing. So we'll get to that though. But before we get to that, give some more specifics on like how does this solutions team bridge the teams, like between sales and CS, or how is it one team, and like what are the specifics that go into it so it works?
Yeah. I think the first thing to talk about, like tactically is one thing that we've really looked to implement, and I actually implemented this at Showpad too, but a solution design document. What is a solution design document? It is literally an outline of what we are selling and why the customer is buying, right? What are the use cases? What are the value props? What metrics are we tied to, right? What does success look like? Because we all know that the handoffs are inherently flawed. I've got a whole point of view that handoffs are broken, and you can't convince me otherwise. It's just less or more broken generally, right? So one, you could do things like solution definition documents, right? Where the team in the pre-signature process and that initial sale process is documenting everything so that once the prospect becomes a customer, we are implementing and we're not asking the same question over and over again. I could give this example. My dog was sick 2 years ago, right? I called the vet, freaking out, told them what happened. They said, we're gonna have somebody else call you back. They called me back. I explained the whole story again. They're like, the doctor's going to call you. The doctor called me back and asked me to explain the story. And I was like, I have literally explained this story so many times.
Nick does this to me all the time.
I mean, Nick's asking you the question, right? It's like, why are you asking me this question again and again and again? And this is what happens in software. The BDR asks the question, the AE asks the question, the SE asks the question, the PS asks the question, the CS asks the question, and the buyer is so fed up, right? And it's just like, come on. So things like just an overall alignment on like a definition document, whether it's a document or technology. And then I think the overall aligned goals. This is what I'm really trying to keep my pulse on. A trend that's happening, and a lot of companies don't want me to share what companies are doing this, but they're making sure sales reps are actually comped on adoption and utilization and launch metrics. Sales reps in some companies don't get commission unless a customer launches. I've talked to a couple of CROs who are like, I don't love this at all, but like it changes the level of accountability. You can't sell bad deals anymore, right? So those are tactical aspects. And then just the idea of the org design of making sure the goals are aligned. So a very simple thing, if you have a customer success team, bring the customer success team into the conversation before a deal signs. Let them get to know person, right? Let them understand who they are and what they're going to be able to achieve, because this is like one of the fallacies of software is like, I talked about a sales rep and a solutions person build all this trust. Let's talk about enterprise sales. You spend 12 months building trust, and then all of a sudden you disappear and you transition trust. And you're saying, because you liked me and trust me and you trust TestBox, you're going to trust Nick over here at TestBox because we work under the same company. That is flawed. That doesn't actually work in reality. So you have to transition trust along the way and bring people into the fold earlier than you usually would. And most people will say, James, this is too much work. Well, if you want to build a business with strong NRR, low churn, and expansion, this is what you have to do. This is it, you know, especially if you're selling big ACV products. Like you can't just say, see you later anymore.
I'm going to have Nick ask the last question so we get to the exclusive content, but I'm going to ask you a question of partners in the exclusive content that I want your opinion on. How do you get partners involved in this? But don't answer it now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the last question, I think you touched on it a little bit, but why do so many organizations struggle to like unify these teams? Like, and we can dive deeper into those frameworks or strategies, I think, in the exclusive piece. But like, if you had to give kind of like that high level overview of like, what are those barriers and how do you bridge those gaps? Like, what would you say?
Have either of you read Multipliers?
No.
Great book.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Multipliers. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And Multipliers, do you know what they talk about that really resonated with me is fiefdom building. There's a whole generation of executives and software people out here who've been taught that fiefdom building is the way to show power, to show influence, and to show success. And what has happened, right? We've got this whole era of SaaS, right? Because I'm a person who grew up in a, growth at all costs. That's the era I grew up in selling in, right? So, you have all these people who grew up in different eras, and it's no fault to them, but that is what they've been taught as success. And so what happens now is at the end of the day, it's ego. Ego comes into most of this to say, well, I'm customer success. This is the box that I live in. I'm solutions engineering, or I'm pre-sales, which I don't use the word anymore, even after starting Pre-Sales Collective. This is my job. And the account executive, this is my job, right? And there are some, truth to some of this. But again, to my comment earlier, we forgot who matters, and it's the customer. So in the last growth at all costs era, we built fiefdoms that were focused on insular activities and objectives without thinking about the customer, because all of our companies were growing. You could let some companies churn because you're going to be fine. You're still getting investment. You're still on a path to acquisition or IPO, whatever it is. And so you kind of just like, let things happen. But now, as the world has tightened up, we have to rethink our approach to go to market. And this is why I'm so passionate about it. And I'll be honest, Mark and Nick, I got some people who want nothing to do with what I have to say because they're like, this changes my livelihood. This makes my job harder. This is going to be a massive challenge. But, depending on the company's stage and maturity, this is what you have to do to survive. This is about survival at the end of the day. And if you don't have customers to sell to, and you don't have customers to deliver value to, you do not have a business to hire people, employ people, and give them the livelihood that they have today. And so, again, I think it's a psychological aspect of this. And again, that's why I still think the rise of the generalists and my bias is that I'm a solutions profession. I literally got to learn from BDRs and from salespeople and from product marketing and product and engineering. And so I've seen all these organizations work together well and not, and feel like I'm well positioned now to be like, all right, well, this is what I've seen. This is where customers are going. This is where our organization needs to go. And some cases I'll be right. Other cases I'll be wrong. But, I'm trying to lead from the front at TestBox and prove this value story out along the ride.
Tremendous conversation, right, Nick? Just tremendous.
Honestly, you're so on point with and funny thing is, we didn't even really do much prep before this, but you just absolutely crushed it.
15 more minutes. You go to TACinsider.com. You can find the exclusive content. It's right in the navigation. James, we'll see you on the other side.
All right. See you there.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk presented by TAC Insider. To dive into the exclusive content with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to TAC Insider. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.